Hi everyone, and welcome back to Lesson 6 of the New York School of Design's Intro to Digital Design. My name is Vidal Cyperly Valencia, and I'm a fashion designer here in New York City. Here's two examples of buttons. This one on the left is actually what we would call a symbol, which is like an object that can be utilized or placed within Illustrator. I'll get a little bit more into symbols a little further down the line, but until then, you can actually practice by drawing your own trims, for instance, in this case, like a button, and it's super easy. So we're just going to start with our ellipse tool. We're going to create a circle. That looks good. And then we're going to take the same ellipse tool, draw a second circle, which is going to be this sort of rim here. Of course, there's a lot of different types of buttons, and there's a lot of different ways to represent a button. In this case, I'm just going to go with something that has a rim. I've utilized the alignment tools, as we've talked about before, in order to line these circles up perfectly. And I'm just going to make the stroke on the outside one a little bit thicker. That way it has a little more dimension. Now, for the inside, we're going to take the same ellipse tool. We're going to make sure it's still the 1 point instead of the 2. And we're just going to make 4 pretty evenly spaced circles. And so you can create 2, select both, make sure they're aligned. And then I actually will group these together, copy them, paste them, and then just line them up using our alignment tools, and there are your buttonholes. So I would group all of these together. I'm using the shortcut of Command G for grouping. And you can then use the pen tool or you can use the line tool in order to give a little representation as to how you would want these to be sewn shut. In this case, up here, I've done it in a cross way. You, of course, can do it vertically. I'm just going to start with 1. I'm going to select the whole thing, and I'm going to align it to the vertical center. And so when that's aligned, I'm just going to click back on this little line here. I'm going to make it thicker to look a little bit more like a thread. And then I'm going to hold Option and drag it to clone the object. And there's your little buttonholes. So if I just group all of that together one more time, I can just plop that right in here and then utilize our alignment tools to make it perfectly aligned. You want to generally make sure you have a little bit of a suggestion of the buttonhole. Of course, it's going to depend on how big the buttonhole is, how big your button is. But in general, I just will take the rectangle tool, draw a pretty fine rectangle, and then just utilize my same stroke trick in order to create a dashed line. Again, it's going to kind of depend on what you want it to look like. If you want a bound buttonhole, or if it looks a certain way, you're going to want to illustrate that more accurately. But just for demonstrative purposes, I'm just going to do a 10-point and a 5-point gap to just illustrate that it's a buttonhole. And I'm just going to make sure it's a little bit narrow. And then because this is a shape, I'm going to copy it. I'm going to paste it. I'm going to actually click this reverse button here, and I'm going to make the stroke now is the fill. And so now this just has a fill, and it does not have a stroke anymore. And I'm going to reduce the opacity to about 50% up here. I'm going to make sure it looks good on here. And I'm just going to select these 2 shapes, my little shadow as well as my stitch indicator, group those together. And then I'm going to send those 2 pieces to the back. And because my button is all aligned, I'm going to additionally make sure this is all grouped together as one. And then I can make sure using my alignment tools that everything's lined up right again. Now, you can utilize this by grouping the whole thing together. Again, I'm using Command G, or you can go up here to Object Group. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to paste it. Now it is over here. I'm going to go to Object, Transform. I'm going to go to Scale. And I'm going to transform this to be smaller. So I want this to be my button for this shirt. So I'm going to see what 20% looks like, and I'm going to check the preview. 20% is still a little too big, so I'm going to try 10. That's looking better. In this case, you need to make sure you have scale, strokes, and effects, because otherwise, I'll just show you. If you do not, it's going to keep the stroke and the scale, the effects of everything the same. And so when you shrink it down, it's taking this 1 point stroke and making it super, super small, and now it's illegible. So you want to make sure when you're transforming most things, but especially something like this, that you're scaling the strokes and effects. That way it looks right, but just smaller. So that's pretty good. I'm going to then take this, and it could stand to be a little bit smaller. So we're just going to do it at 5%. Okay, that's looking better. We're going to then place one up here at the neck, as you would, and then we're going to place all of these in the correct way, because the placket's going to have vertical buttonholes. And you can just use your option tool and let's make 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we're going to make 9 buttons, and then you're going to make sure that you select all of them at once. And so, well, firstly, you're actually going to make sure that you place the bottom button where you want the bottom button to be placed. So we'll say somewhere around here. And then we're going to go ahead and select every single one of these buttons. And yet again, we're going to utilize our alignment tools, and we're going to align them horizontally. So now they're all perfectly aligned on the placket. And we are going to utilize vertical distribute center, which is going to space them out perfectly evenly. And that is how you get a perfect button placket. So I hope some of these tricks and tips and methods help you come up with some new ways to make sure that your top flats are looking super nice, super polished. Of course, there's so much to learn, and there's always different ways to do things. So if you go online and search something and see somebody's done it a little bit differently than me, that's just how it is sometimes. And I just recommend you keep practicing, keep trying to learn on how to become fluent in Illustrator. And I'm so excited to see your work. I'll talk to you in the next episode.